Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You can find me on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. Spelling GaelanTrombley. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You're an old hat at this, so you know what you're doing.
Sure.
Hello, everybody. Episode 177. Galen Trombley Show. Was that? Testing the mic. 177. Galen Trombley Show. David Coryer's back in house. I think you've pretty much done one every single year. I've done this. He used to get you at least once a year. So Dave was just discussing what do you meme, the card game.
Yeah.
So I have it. So it's kind of like apples to apples, but with silly memes and then like cards to go with it.
Yeah, and very adult cards to go with it.
I love it. So I'm hoping that we're gonna try to play it over Christmas. My sister comes up and some family and just trying to. It's an easy game. Like anybody can play it. So it's just more about laughs than actually like strategy because it's just like for fun.
It's simply like an apples to apples, exactly. Except the memes are these funny pictures that all of us have seen so many times on the computer, but the cards themselves are. Like, you don't want to play this game with your mom.
It's which I actually probably will end up playing with
and you
mom.
almost don't want to play it with your coworkers, but we all did that on Friday.
Does it have the one with like the little kid with the sand photo?
I didn't go through all of them, so I imagine it must.
Because I think that that kid or whatever family ended up getting royalties for the kid that was doing like the sand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I look at it, I'm like, that could have been any kid, but it's just like the perfect like slow-mo picture, which I've used multiple times, and it just has become like an iconic meme. And
it's like the Robert Redford nodding meme, or the kid, the kid at the hockey game.
What's the most famous meme you could think of? There's like the Michael Jordan crying meme. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I think the most famous one is the Robert Redford one, which is him with the beard, when he's young, and the camera is sort of panning into him slowly, and at the last second he just nods. Have you? Yeah, I use that.
I think I've seen, but that's a motion meme. Does those count? Or are those GIFs?
I think those are GIFs or GIFs. I've been saying GIF all my life, but I think somebody says
that's fine.
Neither here nor there. I think that they're also sort of like memes, but maybe they're not pure memes in the sense that they're not just a static picture.
Well, there's I know one of them has like the little girl looking over with the fire burning the house, and she's got like a little like smirk on her face, like she did it, which I don't think, obviously
like
just
the kid with the bowl haircut who has like that empty like smile, like
that. Well, I think the thing with
the
memes, I think a lot of those are older memes that they end up like every year you get memes, obviously, but they're like the iconic ones that just like stand the test of time, and they're just goofy, but everybody's seen them. And
I'd love to know where these things actually come from. Like, is there a meme factory somewhere where somebody just takes photos and decides that they are memes?
Well, what would happen if a meme goes viral? How does that work? Does someone? Because I'm assuming like we got a picture of you, and all of a sudden you became a meme guy, and we're just doing some funky face, and someone was to take that photo, and now it's all over the internet. Like, do you get paid for that? Is there a copyright? Did they how did they steal it off of like maybe they caught it in a newspaper or they saw it on like someone's Facebook page and started sharing it?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm out. I have no knowledge in that arena. I don't even know like.
But imagine being a meme generator. Like that was your job.
I think a meme generator would have to be somebody who also works for like Reddit and sort of just wants to sort of garner additional traffic. That's what I would guess.
Well, you look at. So I'm on Instagram and there's so many funny ones. Like I follow a lot of golf ones that are hilarious, but there's a bunch of real estate ones that some of them are so funny that they make you laugh like out loud because you're in the industry. So like for you, it'd be like a hiring kind of staffing, and you'd find all these memes around that, and you're like, oh my god, like stuff that you guys roll your eyes at, or the what's it called, the stereotypes of staffing agencies, but they hit it like nail on the head, and they're like absolutely, and
without a doubt.
And one of the memes, there was a picture of this was recently, a guy, the guy who stands with the sign, the cardboard sign, dude with a sign, I think they call him,
right?
Whose job is to sit there with a sign,
right? And it's just a random like comments that are like,
but they're hilarious,
completely ridiculous, but they're relating to whatever he's at, right?
Yes, and I think one of them said it's data, not data, but it was spelled the same. So all you saw was the sign that said it's data, not data. But it was like how do we pronounce it? But the one that the person had, the real estate meme was oh, your dad is not a home inspector. And that was the sign that they held up. But of course, everybody in the real estate industry, as soon as like the dad or the uncle show up, you're like,
Right.
oh boy, like
Here they go.
he's got all his credentials popping out of 30 years of home ownership. So, Dave, what have you been up to? What, like, staffing industry, Dave Coryer life? Last time we connected was at the tournament for the kids. We'll get into that, sponsored by you guys.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen you in a few months.
We've been into a lot. We're busy, as anybody knows. Our recruiters are working harder every week, and thankfully there's been even more hiring going on, and we've seen an uptick in candidate traffic. We've been proactive at outreach to candidates online, and just, again, driving candidates in the door so that we can better take care of the clients that we have week in, week out. But there's been just a ton happening across the board. Also, we have a Russell Merrill, who's been with us for a little over a year, and was an officer in the Army prior to joining us. He raised his hand, and he is now our branch manager in training for our office in Essex, Vermont.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's exciting. He's over there. I think last week was his first sort of week actually working over there full time. And
is that a new expansion or
brand new?
Oh, so he's to get from the ground up.
Nice. Brand new office build out.
Okay.
Just going for it over there, bringing the Coryer culture to Essex, Vermont, which is great.
Congrats! I didn't know that. So, where are you located in Essex? Did you buy like an old building, storefront?
We rented an office space on Susie Wilson Road, which is just, I guess, north of Five Corners by about a mile and a half. And it's a great office, wide open space that we had partitioned according to our specifications, allowing for sort of a reception office, a couple interview rooms, and then some space in the back for recruiters.
So you could build out to how you wanted it,
yeah,
kind of suited to you guys?
Yeah, it was a big open floor plan, completely open. We met with the owner of the building, who happened to be sort of a commercial, he owns a ton of commercial real estate over in that area, and a super nice guy, super flexible, and very reasonable rent-wise. So the risk profile is pretty low, but we think the opportunity is huge.
So I was going to say, so the market over there is a good market then?
Yeah.
Or a market that you can tap into?
Yeah, I think the market over there is similar to the market over here in that there's a lot of industrial and warehouse businesses, not too dissimilar from the Plattsburgh profile. We didn't go for like downtown Burlington or South Burlington vibe. We're sort of moving towards that. The Essex, Vermont vibe is a lot like Plattsburgh in many ways.
Kind of like the build out of the city a little bit, like kind of spreading out the area.
Yeah, if you drive around in that region, you'll see there's a ton of there's Keurig and other large employers in that space. Plus, going from there north to the Canadian border, there's of course a ton of industrial.
So Essex is north of Vermont,
it's really,
Vermont. North of Burlington.
It's east of Burlington.
It's east. Okay.
I think if you were to look at
it, I always go like
map.
South Burlington, Williston, right, and then Shelburne. It's kind of the south.
Yeah,
southern.
if you instead of getting on the highway as you normally would coming from the ferry, you kind of go over the highway.
Okay.
And then you take that road. I think it's Route 7 south.
Yep.
It ends up sort of meandering southwest. Southeast rather.
Okay.
I mean, southeast, and it sort of lands, again, several miles, a couple miles east of, a little bit northeast of the airport. But I think as the crow flies, it's probably northeast of Burlington.
So, in a position like you guys, when you decide, hey, we're going to expand, we're going to go out to a new area, and you pick Essex. Is this something that's your headquarters, but I'm assuming you guys can venture into other, it's not like geographically you're tied just to Essex, right?
No.
So, but it's just where you hang your hat. And
it's a stake in the ground. It's a place where people can come and meet with our recruiters in person, and where we can meet with our clients as well, if that is necessary. But it's really to sort of bring our service, bring our recruiting style to that market. There's primary markets, secondary markets, and tertiary markets. Mm-hmm. I think that without sort of getting really into the inside strategies of Coryer staffing, I think servicing this industrial warehousing sector from market to market is going to be a focus of ours.
Now, how long of a process does this take until like now you said you've been open what about a
week?
Okay, week. So how long has this been? Like, how long do you plan for something like this? Like, mentally plan, like, kind of like, I want to expand. You kind of make the decision to expand, and then how long does it take from making the decision to expand to actually to the point a week ago where you're like, okay, we're actually open?
Well, I think that, if you ask my wife, we've been planning on expanding into Vermont since the day we opened our doors here. We knew that we would have a multi-office approach. We will have more offices in the future. A lot of it is like anything else. It's seeing the stability of your main location, seeing the success and profits from that location, and then sort of being strategic as to how you lever that I guess experience and I guess any strategy you put in place. Can we duplicate this? Do we have an offering that is going to be compelling for a new market? And a lot of it is sort of gut instinct, and I guess like what they say, the inaction is the only action worse than the only thing worse than like bad action is inaction or something like that. There's
it's better to make a decision and be a bad decision. Like don't correct the path.
Right.
So is it nerve-wracking? I'm assuming, like in the sense of like there's just a lot of moving parts, and you got to make sure it kind of fits. Yeah. It is. It's always a risk when you open something because you're putting a lot of eggs in a basket. Like you're putting resources, you're putting time, you're putting money.
Yeah, but I feel like 5 years ago was a real risk for us to open up our own location here. We had nothing. We had an idea. We knew we had a strategy as to how we'd want to approach the staffing world in Plattsburgh. We have executed on that. There'll be nothing ever, knock on wood, but I can't see anything being more sort of nerve-wracking and unsettling than going from zero to where we are today. I don't feel, there's a part of me that feels like there's almost no risk to opening up another location. As far as, we know how to execute the business. We know how to train people to do the business well. We care a lot about the candidates who register with us. We care a lot about the clients who come to work with us and trust us to help them, hire the people they're looking for. That is work that we really enjoy doing, work that we're passionate about. So I think in any market where we're doing that, I think it's, we're going to have hits, we're going to have misses, but by and large, we're going to learn month in, month out what we're doing right, what we need to improve, and keep executing and keep growing. Having a recruiter over there working, having some office space over there, supporting that individual to do that business. It's the opportunity costs of not being there are greater than actually being there.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, you get a good pulse on the market. You kind of, you bet. I think a lot of it's gut. Like I think I make a lot of decisions gut. Are you kind of the same way? Where you kind of get like a really like weird emotion in your stomach where you're just like, this just feels like it's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I would have to give credit to Elizabeth. She's really I'll wait for months and months and months before we do something. But, I think she came home one day and said, listen, we're going to do it now. And let's go to Burlington next week. Let's pick out a place and let's stop talking about it.
So it was that quick? Like,
yeah,
kind of once the decision hit,
yeah, because, and for me, that's kind of exciting too, because if she feels that way, she feels that strongly. She has such good instincts about our business and just about business in general, where when she says, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I think the time is now. Then it's really easy for me to be like, all right, then it's almost like the switch turns on in my head and says, okay, then A, B, C, D, let's go. We're over there on Tuesday. We're meeting with a realtor. We're looking at locations. We're over there the following week. We're finalizing which location. We're over there the following week. We're meeting with contractors to build out. We're meeting, every other week we're in Vermont while the whole build out takes place. Sort of, then once you're there, then it's like, all right, let's go.
So things just move quickly.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, that's, like I said.
Once you make the decision, you might as well go, right?
Yeah, and that's why, that's the majority of my life. It's like, I always look like, just do it now. Like, why? Because there's so many times in life, and I think in business, where people, you might be like with a client, like, yeah, that sounds good. Why don't we just, we'll talk about it next week. I'm like, well, we're both sitting right here. Can we just,
right.
Here, it's not more than a few minutes, most likely, because you probably just rip through it and if it has to really take a long discussion, I still think setting the ground like up front, like, okay, let's work, or at least kind of like look into this stuff. So when we do meet, we're already that much further ahead. But I hate the procrastination of, well, we'll just do it next week or next month, or just kind of punting things or kicking the can down the road. Because I'm like, we're here. Like if I had a question, like hypothetically with you, I wouldn't be like, all right, see you, Dave, and then like email you tomorrow and be like, hey, can we get together and talk about this? I'm like, well, if you're here, I'm just going to ask you, or vice versa. And I think one, it just saves time. I think at the end of the day, it's time saver is a huge thing.
Yeah, and Jared Murphy's our lead recruiter over here. He's the one who brought Russell Merrill in to work at our company a little over a year ago, or around a year ago. And we met with Russ, thought he was great, hired Russ. He quickly became competent as a recruiter, but he had a bunch of if you're an officer in the Army. And you've had a lot of training. You know what it's like to lead a group of people, how to be responsible for yourself, how to be responsible for a team of people. So we knew that we had a lot of horsepower in that hire, and he sort of made it known to us at the beginning. Listen, I want to come aboard, and I want to learn what it means to be a recruiter, but I also want to do more. So I don't know what that means. And we said, well, we may be looking to open up another location in east of us within the year. And he's like, well, then if let's see how this goes. But if it goes well, then I'm going to raise my hand and say I want to be over there. And so for us, that's also easier, as opposed to just training a complete stranger over in Vermont to execute the business and not even know our culture, not even know sort of how we work, how we manage. I think that's a big deal, and I think that's a big plus. And it might just be the blueprint moving forward. Anytime you have a new office location, groom somebody to go, as opposed to just hiring the first hire being somebody that's brand new, a stranger.
Well, I think like you said, someone I've been researching and reading and trying to like get better at like a leadership and like culture and and a lot of getting people on the same page and kind of like rowing the same rowing the same direction. And there's so much to like leadership and I'm going to say leadership and culture like hand in hand,
right?
Or like vision, or like setting the vision and setting like where the focus is. And it's tough. Like it's not like something that comes natural. And I think, at least for me, internally, I can have it. Like I have a pretty good internal sense of like I can lead myself to what I want to do. But then when you're trying to get multiple people, then it's like you got to level up that next level. So like someone like Russ, if he's like, hey, it's basically like give me the ball kind of deal. Right. Like give me the ball, I want to take the shot. And I think getting someone that has the confidence and wants to take ownership of something, I think is great, because I don't like to micromanage. So if somebody was like, hey, I'm going to take on that project, or I want to spearhead that, I'm like, great, this is kind of what I want to do in the grand scheme of things, and this is an avenue that we're going to use to get there, and then you make sure that it just kind of goes and follows that path. So it's kind of like telling people like what the overall vision is, but then taking and not showing you how to do it, but like, here's what I want done, and can you take that idea and put your spin on it, or your talent or whatever on it, to try to get it to that next level. And those people are hard to find, because they have to want it, and they have to, I think, push. I don't know. What do you find in that?
Yeah, I think leadership is really leadership and culture. I come from the mentality that culture will beat strategy, hands down. I see. Well, let me back up. When my wife graduated college, she joined a small computer parts, I guess, company out of Rochester, selling computer components. We're talking about back in the 90s, so it was pretty popular for large companies just to buy computer hardware, components, and whatnot from a variety of sort of like CDW, and then there were smaller players in the marketplace as well. So she went there, she worked her butt off, and it was super, super hard, but she learned the business inside and out, and was a successful salesperson for them. So they opened up an office in San Diego, but asked her if she would go out and launch it with another individual. And so that sort of gave us that imprint of, okay, that seems to work. She's experienced that. The leadership that you develop, the culture you develop at your, let's say, location A, you have to, I think as a leader, you have to be comfortable with the fact that people are going to take from you, the good parts. And if they really are leaders, they're going to go somewhere else and they're going to apply what they've learned, but also bring their personality, bring what they think is going to work. And you have to trust them that they are going to sort of implement and grow the business in a way that it's probably going to be a version of the home office, but it's not going to be a duplication. Mm-hmm. And I think leaders have to be comfortable with that. People want to have ownership, even if they don't have quote unquote ownership. They want to know that, hey, I have some command and control of what's happening here every day. You hired me to run this, let me run it. And I think that, Elizabeth and I really have we have a lot of strengths along those lines. We're the anti-micromanagers. I want to sort of give big outlines as to how we want things executed. I don't micromanage the activity on a daily basis, but we do manage sort of the activity on a weekly basis and a monthly basis and performance and everything else. But, we want to hire people who, A, are adults, come to work every day, they understand what we're trying to execute, and then they use their own ingenuity and their brights to sort of make it happen.
Do you guys do a lot with like metrics and tracking and amongst, obviously, you have your finances and numbers like that, but do you guys track like daily activity, weekly activity, monthly activity?
We have it all tracked. There's, I'm a believer in having sort of like key components, key metrics that you sort of watch. I believe that, there is such a thing as paralysis by analysis. If you're managing every single breath that somebody takes every day while they're sitting in their seat, trying to execute the business, ultimately, all you have is you're building people who are just robots of your vision. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think I don't think it's effective for performance, not only short term, medium term, but long term. But I also don't think that what happens is those jobs become less enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Anything that you can manage along those lines are probably better suited for a machine to execute. Mm-hmm. When you bring a human being in and they're going to work and sit at a desk, meet with your clients, meet with your customers, have conversations, bring their personality to the mix. It's hard to sort of, I think there's a danger in over-regulating that activity, hour in, hour out every day.
Yeah, I try to.
It's hard though.
Well, I look at business as two things. I think like, you tracking obviously the numbers and the stuff that means something. Like you said, like the big numbers, big KPIs, not the minute little details all day long. But I think the idea is you give someone a platform and you give someone you try to give them a space that they can go in and like make their own, but then execute on their ability. Because I think, especially in like the real estate land, like every agent's different. So it's like, this is what I do and this is what I think it has worked for me. But if I had to really strip it down, I say stuff different than the agent B or C or ABC. But at the end of the day, here's like general themes. And as long as you can kind of encompass the themes in your conversation, like if I'm talking to a seller, like there's certain things that I want to come across in the conversation. The order, when I talk about it, how I talk about it is kind of up to me. That's kind of where you put like the personality onto it. But just make sure you hit these things because at the end of the day, that's what we really need to figure out.
Without a doubt. I mean, there are definitely word tracks plus, quote unquote, that, if somebody has no idea about our business, I can outline for them nearly every single scenario that they're going to happen upon. Mm-hmm. And what are sort of proven techniques, proven ways to sort of have a conversation around those objections, right? If you're really kind of getting into that, really block and tackling way of sort of going about a sales day. Mm-hmm. They say this, here are some good ways to sort of come back with this. I know all of those like the back of my hand. I certainly deliver and train our people on those when they're brand new, but then the rope is let out quite a bit. I want people to enjoy themselves, and turnover is super expensive. It's not only expensive in hard dollars for a business owner, but it's expensive in what it does to the relationships you have with clients. If every time you have turnover, that means that there's a whole slew of clients who now have to sort of re-engage with somebody else on your team and then reevaluate, is this my best solution moving forward? I think all of those are sort of these hidden costs of turnover that people don't always calculate. And I'd much rather sort of allow somebody, if somebody underperforms from a financial perspective, in over a month or a couple of months, that's something that you can sort of bring in and have a conversation around and kind of point them in the right direction and help them be better. But if they're coming into work every day and enjoying themselves and feeling like they're productive and feeling like they are adding value and adding value, especially, and I think in our both of our businesses, it's like you're helping individuals either land a job, you're helping individuals buy a house. Both are super personal experiences, and I think that the better that we can sort of have a team that's engaged in that work, authentically engaged, I think the better the results will always be.
I think that, we're both service industry, so it's
Right.
like at the end of the day, I tell agents this all the time: we don't own anything. Like any home we sell, we don't own. Like
Right.
so, people like, what are they looking for you? Why would they use you over not using a realtor or not using you personally? I said it's one is the value, it's your personality, your value, your you kind of the what's the word, like you make it easy, like what's the word? Convenience, the convenience
Yeah.
aspect. So I'm saying, like,
Facilitate.
you facilitate. So it's like they use the knowledge, but they also want the convenience, not having to do a bunch of stuff and not having to come up with figuring out the best way. Because like, well, I'm just going to trust you because you put all this time, effort, and energy into learning I would say, I don't say the best path, but a pretty darn good path, because you're always trying to get better. But like my knowledge versus a newer agent versus no agent is better. Your knowledge versus someone that just came in versus someone who's not in the staffing industry. So it's like you got to find someone that knows what they're doing. Like if I had to find a true staffing, I would come in and say, "Hey, Dave, I have no clue what to do. You know all the ins and outs. You know the regulations. You know all the jargon and everything else. And again, you can see the red flags and you can see potential pitfalls way before the layman can, because you're going to say, we shouldn't do that. Like, why? This looks perfect. Like, well, this, and this are red flags, but it's such small details that like at that moment in time might look insignificant, but then give it a couple weeks or months, and then all of a sudden it rears its head, and then you're like, oh, okay, good thing Dave saw that, or his organization saw that way before. Now, do you guys find being a staffing agency, if you were to have turnover, does that? Because I always think like someone that's used to hiring would be good at keeping people, but obviously it's a different thing. You know what I mean? Because you're bringing companies on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you still are good at hiring. But some people just leave jobs just for normal. I mean, there's many reasons why people would move on from different positions.
I think that that's an interesting thing that you bring up. The mechanics of helping a company hire. They don't necessarily, you aren't necessarily communicating to them the culture that you have inside of your own company. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I can certainly, here's what you ought to do, Mr. and Mrs. Client. You ought to meet this many of candidates, and here's how you ought to meet them. Here's how many interviews there should be, and here's how long we should take between you giving me the job order and when we actually get an offer on the table. And it shouldn't be any much longer than this for a whole host of reasons, and I can explain why. Like, all of those are sort of the block and tackling of sort of going through a hiring process. But I, as a business owner and having a team of recruiters that work with us every day, that's different, because now it's my own culture. And what am I doing internally to help the individuals that I've hired help clients navigate those scenarios? So I think that in fact, the staffing industry is rife with turnover in the staffing companies themselves, by and large, because I think that there are far too many of them that, you start looking at KPIs and you start talking about placements and you start talking about, anything other than, hey, I'm meeting a candidate, I'm understanding what they want, and I'm having conversations with clients, and I'm understanding what they need and what they'd like us to go find for them, and I'm working really hard to making certain that those matches make sense. All too often, all clients care about is, how many placements are you making this week? Mm-hmm. How many placements are you making this week? And I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth, because there's a certain number of placements that have to happen every week in order for a staffing agency to be successful. But, I'm trying to hire bright enough individuals and empathetic enough individuals and people who are nuanced enough where they can recognize that, yeah, I may not hit my KPI for the week, but if I know that I have, sort of in a very real way, helped clients hire the people they're looking for, helped candidates navigate the marketplace so that they're landing someplace that's going to help them achieve their goals. That's more important long term, and we make that clear to our people week in, week out. Like we're never sort of holding that hatchet over their head, saying, "Hey, listen, if you don't hit your KPIs this week, then guess what? Get another job."
Yeah. Do you find? Because I think the parallels in our business, people like, you're a salesperson, you're just gonna talk someone into buying, and it's like, well, that's not. I've never talked to anybody into buying a house. Like, if you can find someone that can talk someone into buying a house, like, I'd love to meet that person. Because,
I never talked to anybody into leaving a job.
Yeah,
to go somewhere else.
Because they're big decisions. Like, and I kind of joke around. Like, I can sell you a crappy piece of coffee. Like, I could probably sell you a crappy coffee. If you don't like it, you can throw it in the garbage and go to the store just down the road and buy another $3 coffee. You can't do that with houses. You can't do that with jobs. So it's like, I find that it's always funny. And of course you find over time, like, how you can, take that objection and kind of almost like say logical stuff, but then it becomes kind of humorous. That's like why that question was even asked. But I think the same thing, it's, certain metrics and certain, the amount of, I guess if you go from a dollar perspective that I've left on the table to make sure that I was doing right by the client, it just felt better, because I'm someone that I get really guilty if I if I do something wrong, I get super guilty.
But you have to imagine, like, let's just say you have a group of sales reps here, and there's a few of them who have been hitting their marks for a while. Both personally, they know, and real estate's one of those, it's black and white. If you're not selling homes and you're not making money, you're not keeping the food on the table. So they have both their own internal pressures, their family pressures, and maybe even the pressures from the agency. Hey, listen, you're not hitting your mark. It's completely within the realm of possibility that somebody could try to talk somebody into, somebody has doubts about this home that they've been sort of dancing around for a while. Mm-hmm. That individual might be like, God damn it. I just want to close this deal. We're so close. And the guy has a problem with how the window's open and how this, and I just got to figure out a way to get this guy closed. Right. Yeah. And I think that anytime you're saying, I just got to figure out how to get this guy closed, that's like the major red flag in my mind. Like, I just got to get this guy to accept this offer. I just want the client. I just got to figure out some way for them to extend an offer to this candidate. I just got to get it done. To me, it's like, okay, step back.
Yeah.
Take yourself. You're talking. What you're talking about is a scenario that's good for you.
Yeah, it's an ego thing or self-indulgent. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do what's best for the clients, and you have to be willing to say to both parties, hey, if this isn't working, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to go out of business if I don't sell this home today. I'm not going to go out of business if I don't make this placement today. And you have to allow your realtors and my, the recruiters at Coryer Staffing to feel the same way. Like, hey, if it doesn't come together, yeah, it stinks. But I want to sleep at night knowing that everybody realizes that they're still going to have their jobs on Monday because we didn't close the deal on Friday afternoon, but let's keep working it.
Well, I think, one thing, we live in a small area where reputation is your currency, basically. Like, if you find out that someone thinks you're a scumbag, and that just translates to that's how people think about you, that doesn't help business. And then number two, it's like, everything happens for a reason. Like, I just believe that so often. Like, in the amount of times I've done a deal, I'm like, and you just feel like you took a step back, but then all of a sudden, which you can't see, but a week, 2, 3 weeks later, a month later, you take 3, 4 steps forward, and you're like, holy crap. Like,
right.
But I think it's just a lot of, it's the intent, it's trying to do stuff correctly, it's trying to do right by others, it's trying to do right for others, and it's like you kind of keep that as like your North Star, that kind of ethical guidance of like, hey, I'm really going to try to make a difference for this person, not because of myself, but, I had a printer for years until I basically moved into this office, and underneath the main thing, it said, if you take care of the people, the numbers take care of themselves. Right. And I had that on a sheet of paper that I've had it for years. And I remember I had it when I was young because it was that same thing. It was like, you weren't doing very well and you were trying to get your footing in the industry. And it was like, it is like anybody that works in a job that doesn't really have a set salary, like, when you're starting off, it's pretty rough. And there were some early years where I was like, oh my God. Like, you're like, should I quit? Do I need to get a second job? All these thoughts go through your head.
Of course.
And I remember, like, at no point, and I can pat myself on the back now, is that at no point did I stoop or snoop down to like a lower level of like selling my soul kind of thing to make a deal. I was always like, nope, I'm not going to do it, not going to do it. And there was times that I would tell people not to buy something, even though I was like back in my head, I'm like, God damn, I gotta really sell something.
It would be great to close.
Yeah, just be awesome. But I'm like in my head, I'm like, no, this is not the best scenario for you guys. And based on what they were telling me, and I think over time it's paid off. But there's some times where it's tough because you really got to stick to your guns at that early time. But every single time I've just thought of the client and really did my best for the client. And it's kind of something that's ingrained now. It's like I've never been a big dollar and cents guy from like real estate. You get a commission. Like that doesn't get me excited. Like getting a commission check doesn't get me all excited. Like I get more excited getting a deal together.
Right.
I get more excited like
knowing that a family bought a home, and in their mind this is like an exciting opportunity for them. And for the seller, they're like, now they're moving on to something else.
Yeah.
Like I can totally get that.
It's like the culmination of everything. But the biggest high I get from real estate is getting an offer accepted, or getting like that initial like, all right, we beat someone out in a multiple offer, or we sold the house in a couple of days. Like that's where you get the thrill, because that's really where all the work is. And then the closing process, you kind of just hang on for the ride, and because there's feels like a million people with their hands in the pot in the last like 8 weeks of the deal. But that's always the most fun, is like getting the deal together, because that's when you see people excited, and that's when they're usually the most excited.
Right.
And then again, you try make sure everybody maintains that kind of level of excitement all the way to closing. But but that's the thing. I think just focusing on that over and over again, and that's why, like, I could see, knowing you and and I think the company is like, I could see that happening, where it's like, I think you're only good if you have that mindset. Like if you didn't, you'd never survive if you had an opposite mindset.
No, but what's hard is that you have players that you're competing with who you have those other mindsets, and sometimes they beat you to deals and they beat you to situations, but you almost have to remember, like there might be somebody who registered with you who you knew wasn't a good fit for this client, and even though it would have been easy just to place them there because it would have been another placement for the week, you find out that person went to another recruiting agency and they knew those jobs were available, so they just hurry up and place that person there. But there was some thought behind it. There was some intention behind why you thought this way, and it wasn't anything like, I don't like that individual. It's simply, I think there's a better fit out there for that person. I think there's a better fit out there for that company, and we're just going to take a little bit more time to make that happen. But like you say, everything happens for a reason, quote unquote. So you're hoping that works out for those individuals, and maybe you were wrong, but all too often you find out that a couple months down the road they're not together anymore, and there's that you're sort of vindicated. But in the short run, sometimes people feel like maybe I overthought that. Maybe I should have just made the placement and walked away. And but I tell them, listen, you have to listen to your gut. If it didn't happen, if you didn't make it happen, don't worry about it. Let's keep going.
So a question I actually want to hear your perspective, and I think maybe at this point you've built up the we'll call them calluses at this point, just through so many years of doing it, that you just built up this ability to do so. But when you look at anybody, you ask someone about what's the hardest thing, the best and hardest thing about any job is always the people. Like the best parts of people, the worst parts of people. Right. Like in most situations, your business is people. Like, right. And that's like, we sell houses, which is a physical, structure. It's not living, it's not breathing, but you're dealing with all the complexities of a human from two sides. Because obviously you have your candidate, and then you have the company. How is that where your service, or I'd say product, but your service is humans? Like, how does that work out where you have, obviously you have your company you're working for, and actually what you're doing is matchmaking two people, which again, like I said, we're trying to do it with a house. So the reason I say that is because sometimes buyers and sellers don't get along, but there's typically enough little buffer in between, and there's a house in between, that it kind of keeps things a little okay. But you're putting like two people directly in contact with each other. And I would just, having known what I know about people, and like very complex, everybody's got their own personalities and goods and bads, and then trying to take all of that, and your business is generated just around people all the time. How have you been able to navigate that? Or am I thinking too much into it where it's not as...
No, I think that you're thinking like most people think about it. When somebody when I'm working with somebody and they're new in the business, and I tell them, listen, people are going to let you down every day. Mm-hmm. Companies are going to let you down. Individual candidates are going to let you down. Yeah, it just goes with the territory. And let you down is sort of like a broad brush of, they're going to change their minds. They're going to do what's best for them. They're not going to do what you thought would be best in order to make this deal come together. People wake up someday and they're like, I thought I wanted to leave my employer, but I don't. And now I'm sort of in this situation with this recruiter who thinks that I want to leave. And all of this plays out. But I tell them, we meet with people, and without people, we can't make placements. Without people, there's no business to be had. But who you are and what you bring to that situation is the service that you're providing. You are the service. The candidate's not the service. The client's not the service. It's your ability to be authentic, be empathetic, do your best to get a group of people to go to work for this client or to help this client and this candidate come together. How you listen, how you approach it, how you handle when things don't go the way you wanted them to go. Like, are you really in it authentically for the service? Are you delivering really good service to both parties? That's what somebody's buying. They aren't buying. They're certainly paying you to help them find an individual, but they're paying for your service. They're going to employ this individual, but they're paying us for the service we provide. So just be consistent in the service. Be ever available. Be ever. I say these words over and over again, but be authentic and be empathetic. This is a big deal for a lot of people coming together. So who you are and how you help people navigate that, how you handle things when they don't go right, that's the service that people are buying, I believe.
So when you hear a lot of stuff like people are looking for hiring, and that's kind of like a theme I think around the area where people just don't have enough work and people don't have employees. You're in it, so can you kind of speak about that a little bit? Like when again, maybe this is all embellished, but you start to see there's a lot of for hire signs. There's a lot of
everybody's hiring. There's we have just come through like a very unique point in time. You have a combination of situations. You have first, the COVID comes in and it stops everybody from sort of moving forward, and then we realize that we can you can really go down the rabbit hole of the Federal Reserve and the government, and so the government pays people not to go to work, which creates supply chain constraints. In other words, I just heard it said really well on a podcast recently. It said, our economy is about making stuff, and we are a society that buys stuff. If people stop going to work to make the stuff, that means there's less stuff available. If at the same point in time, the government pays people more money than they've ever been paid to not work, now people have more money than they've ever had to buy the stuff. And so now you have this confluence, this situation where you have more money to buy the stuff, of which less is available because less people are working, mm-hmm. and you have a huge sort of supply and demand. You have far more dollars chasing far fewer goods, then you have prices going up. And those companies, when they start to see those dollars chasing those goods, they try like heck to do everything in their power to reignite their workforce, reignite their factories, reignite their supply chains to deliver those products, and figuring out ways to bring people on, paying people more dollars today than they were yesterday, paying people more dollars tomorrow than they are today to help them make the products, so on and so forth. So what happens is every single entity in the area, they can't hire fast enough. And so you have a bunch of people who were forced not to work because of the pandemic, who are then compensated to stay home and take some time before they go back to work. And so it creates this very weird dynamic that every single company is hiring. People are taking more time than ever before in history to sort of determine what they want to do next. Gig jobs sort of come out of the pandemic as well. So I have friends of mine who
gig jobs meaning
gig jobs meaning Uber Eats. I have a buddy of mine who
gotcha.
I have a buddy of mine who worked, as a DJ for years and years and years, and I see him driving an Uber Eats car, and he says, I'm making like $1,200, $1,500 a week driving Uber Eats. This is a no-brainer, and I don't have to interact with anybody other than, walking food to the door. All of these interesting dynamics happening. So more people doing gig jobs, more people sort of sitting on the sidelines waiting for, and justifiably so. You and I both have young kids. If your kid has a sniffle, now your kid has to go home. Your kid has to be COVID tested. There's no stability in the workforce because people are uncertain as to how long they're going to be able to go back to work. They have, employers are forced to be even more flexible, which is good. But so now we are in a situation where it's not every single company is hiring. It's up to us to try to identify individuals in the labor pool who are available or who want to be available, and figuring out where they should go to work next. Because a lot of people have changed their minds as to the type of work that they want to go back to. A lot of people want to use this time, use these additional dollars that are in their savings account as just sort of like that additional time is additional time for them to think, I did this for my entire career. Maybe I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe I want to go out and do something different. We're always sort of like, that's what we find ourselves in every day. Meeting those individuals, trying to place them in those jobs because everybody's hiring, and then hoping that we can move fast enough so that we can get the majority of the people back to work sort of before the music stops, and that would be either the economy sort of hits flat. It's the classic game of musical chairs. At some point in time, because of all of the situations that are happening right now with the Federal Reserve, who will uptick interest rates. Interest rates going up will drive stock market prices down. That could have put the brakes on the economy in some way, shape, or form. Because if interest rates go up, people are less likely to get loans. People are less likely to buy homes. People are less likely to home equity loans. All of these things. Their propensity to improve their homes goes down if borrowing power goes up as far as the expense of it.
Do you?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you think you had kind of mentioned like kids staying at home and maybe a spouse having to stay home because of the lack of stability, or the other thing is if people, I forgot who I was talking to last week about it. I think it was Jordan LeBlanc, and I was talking to him about it. He said obviously daycare right now there's like a shortage of daycare providers. So then a lot of whether it's mom or dad is now facing the option of having to stay home because it's cheaper to stay home, or it's the only thing that you can do because you can't find a place for your kids, so you stay home with them, or that the idea that people are, I think with COVID we kind of went through a spurt, like you said, people kind of realized like, oh, screw it, I don't like working at that job, I don't like going to the office, I'd rather work at home or whatever, and then they maybe started like a little bit of side hustle over the pandemic, which maybe caused them now to not be an employee, but now have their own, maybe an entrepreneur or be a...
I like this flexibility, right?
Yeah, and I think now with the internet, people would probably have gone on and like how many people went and started something on Etsy or started something on, starting their own little e-commerce business online over the pandemic, and then realized like, well, I'm making fairly comparable money, but I don't have to go into the work, I don't have to deal with people.
I'm my own boss.
Got my own flexible time, I can work at midnight if I want. Do you find... is that part of it too? Or are these all kind of...
I think it's part of it. We don't necessarily have the ability to do a full survey of the entire marketplace to find out what are people's decisions, person to person. But, if you look at the world from a macro view and then a micro view and you sort of apply it, you have to just recognize that if it's more difficult to find people today than it was, because we have 4 to maybe 6% unemployment right now, or is it even going down into the 5 point?
Yeah, it could be. I think it was in sixes. Yeah.
That's only a couple of percentage points away from where it was pre-pandemic. So where are those people, And if you really boil it down, say if there's 2 percentage points, that means so if there's 80,000 employees in Clinton, not employees, just people in Clinton County, 2% of the labor pool is a couple thousand people. So what are those couple thousand people doing that they weren't doing before the pandemic? They might be sitting on the sidelines, they might be waiting, they might be doing some gig work, or just doing something different, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say, so it's probably a bunch of little factors kind of culminating in this kind of almost like a perfect storm of all these little factors versus one like thing you could really pinpoint.
Right.
Okay. So that makes sense. And are you finding that that's been a challenge, or are you finding that you can still navigate through that and are still able to have a good enough selection of candidates to place?
No, I mean it's absolutely a big challenge. The advantage that we have over people who don't do this every day is we do this every day. All our recruiters are doing, and all the recruiting support that we have, everybody's effort every day is to identify candidates. Every day. So that's all we do. I don't also sell homes on the side. I don't also run a manufacturing facility on the side. All we do from a recruiting standpoint is let's make certain that we're identifying as many people as possible so that we can represent them to the opportunities that we have available and that we'll have available tomorrow. That's the game.
So when you...
but it's been very challenging.
When you hire or when you try to place someone, you do, like when someone comes in as a candidate, you interview them, right? Like that's proportion. So you're kind of like pre-interviewing them and then kind of figuring out strengths and weaknesses. And do you guys do like personality tests or anything like that? Or
occasionally, oftentimes there's, depending upon the candidate level, we find ourselves, a lot of that is driven by what our clients want us to do. Certain higher level clients will want us to do personality tests. I think if you put up too many barriers for somebody to be considered, I don't know if it's as effective as simply meeting individuals, listening to them, understanding where they've been, understanding where they want to go, sort of being somebody who sort of is helping them along the path of where they want to go. If they're unrealistic as to the next job they want to have or their compensation levels or whatnot, we certainly have to have conversations with them and rein them in, or at least align their perspective so that they understand the marketplace in which they're working. But by and large, people, they know where they've been, they know where they want to go, or they have an idea. And for us, sometimes it's, we occasionally will say, I know you wanted to do this work over here, but your skills really apply well to this over here. And so, let us get you in front of them. And, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You can wake up tomorrow morning and tell us that you changed your mind, you don't want to go do that job. But we think that if you have the opportunity to go meet these folks over here at this company, we like them a lot. I think you're going to like them a lot as well. And then it's up to you as to whether or not you want to go to the second interview or land the job or what have you.
So if you interview them, they go to the company also does they do a process of interviewing?
Yeah, I mean, there's every scenario exists in our world. Everything from we meet somebody and we tell them you're going to start tomorrow at 8 o'clock to we meet somebody and they're going to go through 4 rounds of interviews for a $100,000 plus job.
Yeah. Do you find, is there something are any of them easier or more challenging, or is it just really comes down to like certain instances? Like I'll put it in real estate terms. Like I know, well, 2 things, like always forever, and this has never changed, that lower priced homes, like in our market, because they're the older homes, old style home, maybe kind of like not great condition or deferred maintenance or whatever, those deals are harder to close than deals 3-4 times the value. So typically as an agent, when you start off, like I just know like when you come in, you don't really have a track record and you're kind of getting whatever you can get, which usually is the overflow of what a senior person in the company can't get to. And so you get the overflow of that, which a lot of times ends up being just because of time and what you get paid for the time you put in, and kind of, factoring all that in is that if you go help, obviously the price point's gone up now, but back when I was starting, like homes under 100,000, you would go under contract with them, but you'd run into home inspection issues, you'd run into appraisal issues. So next thing you know, the effort it took to close that was, here, and you got paid here. But then you could go find a home that's $350,000 and the effort level really was like here, but you got paid like this because there were no inspections, the appraisal was fine, and
but so also there's more competition for those listings.
They're yes, they're more sought after, I would say, but the whole idea, like, so like in real estate, most of the time, like I find selling and buying, if you're buying, people typically want to find a home. Right. So the agent, they're not as loyal to an agent. Now some are. Some buyers are very, very loyal to an agent. But typically someone that's looking to buy a home, you see buyers jump ship way more than you'd ever see a seller. A seller, a lot of times, will want to have a specific person or a specific company.
Right, because there's more upfront paperwork. There's more process up front that sort of says, hey, listen, if I'm going to sell my home through you, I don't want to sell my home. First of all, I can't sell my home through 4 people.
But that's true. And then also, they already have something. So with supply and demand, they have the supply.
Right.
So as a buyer that's looking, they want to have an agent help them find something. So that becomes like a means to get something. But at the end of the day, they want that house. So they'll jump ship to get that house. Whereas a seller, like, I already have it. So I need somebody, because I don't need a house. I need a person, or I need a company or a system or process or whatever to help facilitate it. So for us, listings have always been way better leverage. And from a dollar perspective, a higher priced home is typically an easier sale, because you don't run into inspection issues, which are the number one reason deals fall apart. You don't run into appraisal issues as much because the condition of the home meets all the guidelines for the loan criteria.
Right.
And also, I mean,
and also your target buyer is a more stable buyer.
Exactly, and that's when you start. They're not nickel and diming as much. So then you find that all negotiations are very much easier to get through. But it's almost like opposite of, like, you would think that you should work harder for a higher reward from a dollar perspective, but now, flipping to your company, like right now, is there ever a time where you would focus more on getting candidates or focus more on getting companies? Because like, if you're like, man, we have all these companies, supply and demand, now we got to start candidates. Now we got to start marketing the companies to help us be the person they choose to help place.
Yeah, I mean, the markets ebb and flow, right? So that in a right now, candidates are the focus. At some point in time, the economy were to slow. Mm-hmm. You'd hope the relationships you have with your client companies would be strong. But if you're brand new in the market, you'd be like, listen, I can find candidates, they're lined up on the street. I need to find companies where I can place these people. So without a doubt, since 1999, which is how long I've been in this business, there have been markets where you're sort of your job order focused, your client company focused, or your candidate focused, depending upon where you are in the up and down cycle. Getting back to your point about like lower price homes being more difficult and more effort, but less money. There's I have to imagine that for the right agency though, they'd see gold in them, our hills, and they'd say, you know what, if we could just get a process in place where we have our in-house, the appraiser. Not necessarily in-house, but we have a strong relationship with the appraiser, strong relationship with the inspector, and we can sort of make this almost like all right, you want to list with us? All right, the inspector's going to do this, the appraiser's going to do this. We're going to figure out what this thing is really valued at, and we're going to tell you, I mean, as fast as we can, here's what the house is worth. Do you want to sell it for that or not? Because if you don't, then we have to walk away. But if you do, then we can make this happen quickly. We can get buyers that meet this. I mean, I'm not telling you anything about your business, but there'd have to be sort of like some program. And I think it's not unlike us when we place individuals who've had troubled pasts. I don't turn my back on them. I say, I want to meet you where you are. We're going to identify the situations that you're in. We're going to have open and honest, frank conversations with our client companies, and we're going to say, listen, this individual, I'm not trying to put the proverbial lipstick on the pig. I want to tell you, this individual's had some challenges, had some troubles, but we believe that sort of as long as all the cards are on the table and you sort of are aware of the quantity that you're sort of starting the relationship with, we still think there's value there. We think this individual would be a good fit for your company. So let's have an open, honest, frank conversation about how we can help that individual sort of land that job.
Well, when you go from, like in our market, like a lower price home, and lower price buyers and listers, it doesn't really matter because they're both troublesome. Like if you have a house, if you have a lower price house and it's like, great, I got a listing, but then it's like, oh crap, like there's just nightmare inspection issues that we have to get by. And then that's when it kind of comes into like prepping and doing all the work leading up to it and trying to get ahead of any problem. And kind of like you said, put the cards on the table and be like, all right, we know there's an issue with the floor joist down here. We know it needs to be reinforced or whatever. Here's our strategy. Here's our offer or solutions that we can come up with. But I look at, it's funny though, in real estate, I found that of all the, I've spent more time doing lower price deals than like higher end deals because I was just a younger agent working my way up. So like, and I find that like that's where you cut your teeth and you really learn how to become a good agent. And the one thing that I'll find, it's funny, is that the agents or the buyers or sellers that are selling those lower value homes that might come with a little bit more, a little more work involved, I find they're way more resilient because they have to get it done.
Right.
But then I also find that when you really look at someone like that, that's a lot of times where the expertise comes in of like looking out for your client, because a lot of those people, like you said, they're maybe not as stable of a buyer, or maybe the selling is they're banking on the sale as accounting for a lot of like their next financial steps. So that's when you're really crunching numbers and trying to find something that works, because that's when you start having the conversation of like $1,000 is a big difference at that price point. Where if you're at $400,000, it's like really arguing over $2,500, because at the end of the day, when you look at percentage wise and really what it means, like, someone buying a home in the $500,000 range, $400,000 range, like they can both swing whatever that conversation is. Right. They both have the means. At that point, it becomes more of like I want to say like butting heads.
Who's going to win the negotiation?
Who's going to win? Yeah. Like, and on the lower end, it's like they're really factoring in like, well, I would love to do it, but I can only do this. So I find down there you really work, you earn it. And I also find that the people, once you close, especially the buyers are ecstatic, 'cause usually it's their first home. So it's kind of like a big monumental event. And that's kind of like you said, it goes back to like the fun part. It does take more effort, but then you kind of get I always find you get a little bit more satisfaction when those deals close, because you knew it was way harder.
Right. And these people were really, really like, this was their fifth home, and they're just sort of like blasé about closing the deal,
Oh yeah, and they're like, they're stressing out just as much as you are, because you want to keep the deal together for them, and they're stressing over like, this like a $700 fix that we need to ask for like a boiler or something, and it's like, okay, well that starts budgeting wise for these people, that's real money, and so it's always like, and now in this market, like we always need listings, so it's like I love buyers are great, but at the end of the day, in supply and demand world, it's like you still need to have the listings come up, because I don't want like what you were saying, like if something happens, which I think is the only way that's going to affect buyers right now, is if there's some type of government intervention or
Federal Reserve
intervention. I say intervention. That's right term, right? Intervention?
Yeah, I mean,
right
yeah. Intervention
like intervention, like sitting down having a talk, like Dave, we got to really.
No, the government they're going to raise interest rates. The Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates.
Well, I think of like intervention, like sitting around in a circle and being like, Dave, we got to talk about you got to talk about yourself right now. But no, I'm thinking like intervention. That's the same term, right? I'm having like a brain fart, like where someone like puts their hand in and does something, manipulates.
Yes.
So if it's government manipulation of something,
intervenes.
Intervenes. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. I don't know. It was something like that. I'm not great with words, but that's why I host this podcast, right? So, but the whole idea is like if the government goes in and does something that could affect interest rates, could affect the economy, could affect people's extra money they have that they could buy a home. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, I got to save up and I can't do that, or I can't get the bigger house. That right there, I don't want to see that, because we don't, especially in our market, what we don't want to see are areas. We don't want to see the amount of buyers go down. We want to see the amount of homes go up.
But that's inevitable. I mean, the number of buyers are going to go down
at some point
as interest rates rise, because it's it's just a factor of affordability. It's how expensive is my loan now? I mean, I think back, in the 70s, people were getting mortgages for 14, 16, 17% mortgage. I mean, and doing it.
When did you get your first house?
Oh my God.
Or do you remember what the interest rate was?
My first house, I think the interest rate was like 5 or 6%, and so
it wasn't too bad.
No, but I mean, 14% is crazy.
About 30 years was that. It was the 80s and I think early 90s.
70s rolling into the 80s.
Yeah, it was up until the crash at the late 80s.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, you can have a market with higher interest rates, but we've been operating at this low interest rate environment for so long that people just think that that's standard. Banks have suffered because they can't, their spread between what they can loan and what they can borrow is constrained. The arbitrage between those two is razor thin. So creates all kinds of troubles for them, but for the economy, the flow of money is rampant.
What is it with the I was reading like finance books and like stock market books. Isn't it every 10 years it's supposed to go in and out of bear and bull markets? Is it every 10 or is it every 20? There was something.
I think that there's probably on average every
consistent
10 years, every 10 to 15 years, there is sort of a bull bear rotation.
Yeah, and it was pretty consistent through history. I mean, our last one was 2007 to probably 9, 10, somewhere in that range, before it kind of like really started to come out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're looking at we're kind of due for it.
Yeah, it was really 2008 to 11 kind of.
Yeah, I'd say 11. That's right. Yeah, and because I mean now like I don't know if it's any indication, but you see gas prices starting to get higher. They're probably approaching 370 right now. In the gas. And I remember getting my license as a 16-year-old. I think it was 2007, 8. I started like drive and I was starting to pay for gas. It was costing me $60-something a week to put gas in my car. And again, as a high school kid selling ice cream, that was like. That's, if you talk about like what percentage of your income went to expenses, I'm like, well, like 50% of my income went to gas.
Right.
And of course, as a kid, not making a ton of money, like it just like was a punch in the gut but that was 13 years ago, more than that now, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. So like you start seeing that flow where, again, I don't know if it's any indication or whatever, but it looks like, you're kind of following that 10-year, give or take a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to make any sense that it would follow those, troughs. But there are people out there who follow the markets purely from a numbers analysis standpoint, who will tell you almost down to the minute, here's exactly when it's going to turn. And it's interesting. All of these market forces, the price of gas is going up. Is the same thing. It's more dollars chasing fewer resources are going to drive the price of gas up. So if OPEC is restricting their delivery of oil, if U.S. producers are restricting their delivery of oil, if the pipeline coming down from Canada is stopped by the Biden administration, I don't care what side you're on politically. The reality is this: less flow of gas producing efforts with more people in the economy having more money to buy is going to drive the price up, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's just a factor of that.
Speaking of that, when are you getting your Tesla?
I know, right?
Is that happening?
I haven't put the order in yet because they don't have the Cybertruck yet.
Is that so that you're holding out to that?
I've looked at the other Teslas and I've drove yours, of course, but right now, we have a Toyota Tundra pickup. Mm-hmm. We have a Chevy Suburban. And we also have a Toyota 4Runner. They're all decent-sized vehicles. And the 4Runner feels small. And so, like, it's a factor of us opening up another office, needing space, just putting kids in the car, skis and gear, whatever we happen to do. Having a smaller car right now doesn't make much sense, but I think the Cybertruck will be a good replacement of my pickup truck when it becomes available.
And I think we might have talked about this. You don't mind the design of the Cybertruck.
I don't mind the design. I think it's kind of interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see exactly how it looks when it comes off the production line. Mm-hmm. It's still kind of at a pre-production standpoint right now. I like it better than the Rivian. I like it better. I like Elon Musk, mm-hmm. and I like what Tesla's doing. I care about that. I think he has the ability to manufacture these vehicles with a certain degree of reliability, and I think it's going to be fun to have a 4x4 pickup truck that, it's almost in my mind. I'm going to have a hard time sort of remembering that I don't have to worry about gas. Like, you drive a Toyota Tundra around and you kind of have this perpetual guilt of the amount of money that it costs to fuel it, your carbon footprint, all this stuff. It's going to be such a relief to know that I have a vehicle that doesn't burn the fuels and still is you throw a bunch of stuff in the back and take it to the dump.
But the Cybertruck too, I think the towing capacity's on par with most major trucks.
Yeah, it's sizable.
Yeah, and the depending which one you get, the single, the dual, the tri-motor.
Right.
I mean, the tri-motor is the sweet one because just the actual specs from it's 500 miles per charge, which is insane. Because I know what mine gets, and I'll be honest, that's 40% more than what I have right now.
Now, what's your average charge for your Model 3?
If I charge all the way up, it's they'll tell you sticker 350 or 350. I would say conservatively, probably more closer to 320.
Do you have any of that? I was talking to somebody the other day. They said, range anxiety. Do you have range anxiety in the wintertime with your car?
I don't. It does drop off. So like if you have normally what they tell you is you want to charge up to about 90%, roughly 85, 90%.
Yep. Every night you do in your garage?
Every night. So I go in, have a charger in the house or in the garage, charge it. It's not going to overflow. It's not going to just keep sucking battery. It's like it just goes into battery saving mode.
Just like your iPhone.
Yep. It's like, okay, you hit it, you're done. So I plug it in every night. And no matter what, whether I need 20, whether I need 200, but in the winter you lose 40 to 50% of your miles, like just because
40%.
At least 40. I would.
So 4 times 300, that's 120. So really, in the wintertime, you only have like a couple hundred miles as opposed to like 350.
I would usually So when I leave the driveway most mornings, it's around 285, about 285. In the summer, it's like just over 290.
Okay.
About 285. I can probably a very conservative number, drive about 175 to 185 miles in a day, no problem.
Okay.
So if I'm going over that, then I would be a little more. I would actually probably increase my charge to 100% the night before for those.
Do you not?
No, you go to 90. So Tesla,
you can tell it to go to 100. You can tell.
Oh yeah, you can manipulate it. There's like on the app, you literally.
But they tell you not to go to 100 all the time.
Ideally, they want you to go to about 90 because they don't. It's like the idea of your best charging it, like.
There's a range in the middle.
There's a comfortable range. So kind of it says like daytime driving, and then it says like they'll call it like trip or something. I think about road trip. I think it's trip, right? And you would push it up to 100. It can go to 100, but it's the idea that your battery is going to last longer. Now the crazy thing is, I believe the battery I have is supposed to go 500,000 miles, right. Which I calculated it's going to take me close to 30 years to drive that based on my driving behavior. So realistically, I probably could charge up full, but I've had to use a supercharger twice on the same trip.
Now, when you go to this is probably a boring conversation for anybody listening, but when you go on
I like it. I don't care. It's you and me right now.
Right now. When you go on a trip and you go to a supercharger and you plug it in, how long do you have to charge it for have it be meaningful?
I was at the first time I charged it was down to like 15 miles or something.
Okay.
Plugged it in. I probably charged it up
at a supercharger.
At a supercharger.
A legit Tesla branded supercharger up at the mall.
Well, this was down in Queensbury, but it was same.
I was there yesterday. Yeah,
same setup. Yep, Aviation Mall. Yeah, down that one. So pulled in there. Went from like again maybe 15 miles, 10, 15 miles, and I had it charged up to probably about 200, 175, 200, and that took maybe 15 minutes.
That's not long.
No, and I think it charges at like 600 or 700 miles an hour, depending on which one. Like, so mine charges at 50 miles an hour at my house. So you can see, like, when you put it in, you can tell the difference. Like, all of a sudden, just like it charges pretty quick. Typically, I think it can go from 0 to a full charge in maybe 30 to 40 minutes. But the thing is, when you charge, I forgot who told me this. It was someone local. I drove their car. They said, imagine filling up this, and like I was pouring. Okay, so like I'm just doing a visual here, but for people that can't see, it's like filling up something with like a pitcher of water. And typically, if you have an empty cup, you would pour very fast. Right. And what happened is you got close to the top, you would start tipping it back so it didn't overflow. Right. Charging with energy does the same thing because you can never overflow energy. So what they do is, and again, I don't know if there's a science
feather
term.
It.
Yeah, so you'll get to maybe like 90% very quickly. And then the last 10% is where it takes time because it's a slower charge because it's going to get you right to that top number.
Do you remember what it cost you to do that in Queensbury?
It was 0 for me because when I bought it, I used like someone's referral code, which I just heard the other day they got rid of it, but maybe I don't know if that's true or not. But referral code was I used the referral code. The person I used the referral code got 1,000 free miles, and I got 1,000 free miles. So I probably have I've only used it once. I probably have only charged maybe 200 miles ever on a supercharger, 250, something like that. So it's free, but I think if you go beyond that, I think it's only like it might from 0 to full under $10, $6, $7.
Oh, okay.
So it's like nothing, but it's and the cool thing is I believe it just goes through your app. So when you go and like grab the supercharger and connect it, it's all connected through whatever the system is, that it just like, okay, like you just used X, now we're just going to charge your card on file and you're good.
So you're at.
So you just like walk in, plug it in, go sit.
So you're not swiping a card on the electric.
There's literally nothing. You literally grab the handle. Same thing in my charger in my house.
What about the one in front of City Hall?
That one, I haven't.
Because the mayor does his Tesla there all the time.
Yeah, so I've not used that one. I know there's a buddy of mine I know has one, and he charges there, I'd say once or twice a week. I have used the one in the Pepper parking lot across from Iris's. That one, there's an adapter which they give you when you get the car. So I pop, when you get Tesla, they give you like an adapter. So I pop the adapter on. I believe I just plugged it in. I don't think I hit any buttons.
And then you got it charged your app.
I believe the ones in the city are free. But if you go to some of them, sometimes you have to get an app. You have to download the app.
Yep.
But the problem is with a lot of those, if they're not as superchargers, like I tried to do one in Saratoga one time. It was charging at 2 miles an hour. I'm like, I got to like I was thinking, I was hoping it was like 40 miles an hour because I needed like 20 miles, and I didn't do it. But there was, if you've ever been, this is just recent over by Sam's Club by the gas pumps. They just put in new EV chargers.
Right. Someone
told me those are more powerful than the superchargers.
Wow.
Which I don't know if that's true or not, but I kind of want to just go test it out one day. And I don't know. I don't know the brand, so I got to check the brand of that. But there's probably like 4 to 6 of them lined up. So if that's the case, if that's even faster, then because what you're going to see with anything, like the chargers they have now that are going 600-700 miles an hour, at some point in time, fairly soon, will be going 1,000 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Like you're going to get to the point where you can charge your Tesla or your EV car. The same time you go to a gas station, you plug it in within minutes.
Well, that's clearly the desire, right? They need to mimic that experience.
Yeah.
So they're going to have widespread adoption of these vehicles because the people, right now you can get away with just having a few chargers here, there, and everywhere, and having the population be able to install their electric, charger in their house, having the ability to do that, the wherewithal, sort of just. You're going to get the widespread adoption. People aren't going to do that, so they're going to have more widespread.
Well, I still get a little hesitant, like taking longer trips. Like we took a trip a couple weeks ago. We went down, kind of like down by the city, New Jersey area, and my wife wanted to take our other vehicle, and which was fine. I didn't care, but of course, like when you're driving down, you're filling up. Like, geez, I spent just with the gas. But
$60.
But she was nervous about it, and it was fine. Like I think the one thing that would have made me nervous was just because it was cold. It had been in the summer all day long, so I think if they can get to the point where the superchargers are quicker, there's more superchargers. Like right now, there's like 20-something thousand or 22, 23, 24,000 chargers. But I got in trouble one day when I was down in Saratoga. There's no superchargers in Saratoga, which I just
can't believe.
Well, I mean, on me, I just assumed I'm down there during track season that they would have a supercharger.
And it's a wealthy town. Like, what are they thinking?
Well, yeah, I was down there. I saw a bunch of Teslas driving around, but the closest one was Queensbury, which is 20 minutes north. Right. And then from Queensbury, there's one in Chestertown, 26. Right. And then Lake Placid has one. Plattsburgh has one. Burlington has one. I think there's probably a couple more in Burlington or down in Vermont. And there's a handful around the Albany area, but it's until they become. I mean, I really think in the next 10 years you're going to have more EVs on the road than you will gas powered cars. And I also think we're not far away. I think 10 years from seeing supercharger-esque type chargers as frequent as you would see normal gas stations.
Well, I mean, at the gas station, the next iteration is there's going to be a set of pumps that convert to electrical. Yep. And they're not close enough to the gas pumps to sort of create a hazard as far as that goes. But I mean that's going to be the case.
Well, the one in Chestertown is at the Stewart's.
It's at the Stewart's, but it's on the back part of the lot.
Back, yes, it's on the back half. But if you were to like look at that, like I think that's just going to be very common. Is you're going to have a row of you're going to have a row of like petroleum gas or whatever, or you're going to have a row of electric chargers, EV chargers, and I think eventually, definitely in our lifetime, the gas pump is going to be like the rotary phone, or it's going to be like the phone booth at some point in time. It's just going to happen. And so that was kind of one of the reasons I got it. It was like, I'm just going to embrace it. One, I love the technology. I love Elon Musk. I think I
was going to ask you about that. He's Time Magazine's Man of the Year this year.
Is he? I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know that. But
today.
That's great. Well, good reason. I think I don't think there's a more brilliant person on planet Earth in innovation than that guy. Right. I mean, there might be like people that innovate a lot. It's just
no. He's absolutely he is the comet across the sky of our lifetimes. Somebody who, in everything that he's doing, not just, Tesla. And I like how he isn't, he recognizes the real challenge is in the manufacturing, the large-scale manufacturing of the cars. Mm-hmm. He sees that as his competitive advantage. It's not even the fact that he came out with the electric car first, because he wants everybody to have the electric car, mm-hmm. but he knows that he's confident that how he has built out his Tesla, the gigafactories, and how he isn't sort of laden with the technology of the past, whether they be unions, whether it just be a large scale sort of like stagnant, not that workforces are stagnant, but just people who are used to building cars the old way. He doesn't have any of that anchor in the sand, so he can employ all these newer technologies. But it's the large scale manufacturing of these vehicles, which is a real challenge, which he believes, him starting out first, being first mover advantage, even if you're Rivian or anybody else, you're going to have to make all the same mistakes that he's making, mm-hmm. and he has made in moving forward.
Well, and that's the thing when people like Rivian and Ford's making a big push, and Mercedes, I think, is now. I mean, they're all doing it. Volkswagen has one out, and when you start to look at, I think the reason I like Tesla is, number one, it was the first one, and I'm not saying first is best, but like you said, first you have the competitive advantages. If you've already made the mistakes, others haven't. You also have you have the historical data that you need, and then the other aspect of it that I find is someone as innovative as him. I find that most people are playing catch up to keep up with him, where he's like, that's fine, you can keep up with me, but I got all this other stuff that, like, for some reason he can tap into this insane level of like ingenuity of like looking into the future of what we need and able to put it together. And I think I'm really just betting on the person. Like, I could get another EV car and it's probably just, comparable maybe. But I just think over time you're going to see such a massive, like, just level up of what he's doing. And we've seen that. I mean, to go from, 2-3 years ago, you might have heard of him, and now he's one of the most famous people on Earth.
Wealthiest person walking planet Earth, the most famous person on planet Earth, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. I heard somebody say recently that, they're wondering, the self-driving car, how hard is that going to be? They're like, these people need to recognize that with SpaceX, he innovated the reusable rocket and mm-hmm. landing the rocket back on a pad in the ocean. Yeah. If he can navigate that, he can certainly navigate yes.
It's like,
it almost looks fake.
It almost yes. I was gonna say it's almost like there's like a string on. Like, where's the string? Like,
right. I mean, just the motors and all the actuators that sort of make that be able to come back down. It's pure math. It's pure physics. It's just really, really hard math and really, really hard physics. And I think that all of those technologies that are taking place at SpaceX are still being folded back into Tesla from a self-driving standpoint. Just all of their learning in both of these camps are sort of helping one another. It's just fascinating to watch.
I don't even think he's like, one, that's cool, because I think with the rocket, I think it was like $100 million to fly a rocket, and maybe the numbers are off, but it was a sizable amount of money. So He's like, every time we can just land one, we save that money.
Right.
And then and I think for him, it's like he wants to save resources. He doesn't want to. It's not like he's not a wasteful person. Right. Like, he wants to keep everything good. But I look at, Tesla, I think out of all the things that he's doing, I think Tesla is actually the most limited of what he's doing, because, meaning I'm saying, like, right now it's up, but I think you're going to see like SpaceX really start to climb out because he's navigating space. Like, it's skies. Literally, this universe is the limit. But then I also think when he starts coming out with like Neuralink and things like that, tapping into human brains and human, psyche and all that. Everybody knows your brain's the most powerful machine on Earth. Like, and it's the amount of stuff that goes on in someone's brain has the capacity to do it. And I believe with the people that say we haven't even come remotely close to how powerful our brains are. And I think if he can go in and figure out a way to extract even more power from an individual's brain than already has, to me, that's better than a self-driving car. So it's like when he keeps, it's like, to me, which sounds crazy with what he's doing at Tesla, that's it. And you're going to find out, like, that's like going to be a little, like, a big thing, but that's going to be not even worth his time at a certain point in his life. Well, it's just be like, well, yeah, it's cool.
It's not as heavy a lift. The regulatory obstacles are more challenging than the technology.
In all of everything he's doing right now. Yeah, because he's not going to some like easy thing. He's going like tackling some big. Well, did you listen to when he was on Rogan and he talked about? I think was was it planes he was talking about or ships? It was something like that. It was another form of transportation. And he's like, oh yeah, and he started like explaining what he would want to do, and he's like, Joe's like, holy crap! He goes, why aren't you doing it? He goes, I just don't have time. I'm like, oh, okay. So you understand it, like you could do this.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he absolutely understands the physics and the math.
And the way he was saying it was like, well, you get the pressure here and this. And he was talking about, I think, sending planes up to like whatever the height was, because there's less pressure the higher you go. So whatever it was would make transportation quicker, kind of like the Boring Company, like going through a vacuumless tunnel that has
there's far more resistance when they're higher up,
or a vacuum tunnel with no friction.
Right.
Because I think there was something I read where it was like you go from like New York to like LA in like under an hour or 30 minutes or something.
It's crazy how
and then for him that's like a no-brainer. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, what? But imagine if that becomes common. All of a sudden you have these intercontinental or interstate, intercountry, like instead of like a Route 66, like, okay, hop on here and you're gonna get to LA within half hour.
Yeah.
But then you have all these major tunnels and these little sub tunnels, and all of a sudden you have this underground, transportation hub that, I mean, kind of like a subway, but
yeah. I mean, powerful. I think that what's interesting about that as well is let's just fast forward. If we had any type of cataclysmic event, whether it be World War III or meteor coming down and we aren't able to push it away. If we're able to have a lot of transportation be below ground and have it be outside of weather and anything else, available oxygen or just natural oxygen, I think all of that work that we put in now may end up having some additional benefit down the road. I'm not really a sci-fi guy,
but did you listen to Rogan at all?
All the time.
Did you listen to the Jimmy Corsetti?
No.
So he starts talking about like the Egyptians.
Okay. And
he starts talking about like these underground, I think they were in Turkey, these underground like cities, and people, they were like drilling, whatever they were doing back then. But the whole idea was how advanced were these people back then that they started crafting these underground cities. And at one point they said, well, they just did it because they thought they were going to get attacked. He goes, there's no way from the time you thought you were going to get attacked to the time you could actually dig these that you did it in that time frame.
Right.
Because you're going through like...
There was a larger strategy.
Absolutely. And he goes, some of them you can... I think there's one that you can go in, but some of them have been blocked off. And some parts in Egypt, they've blocked off like underground cities that like you don't even know what's down there. And then they started talking about like how they came up with the pyramids. And I didn't realize this, but the pyramids of Giza that we all know about, like I just thought those were the pyramids. But he goes, no, there's way more pyramids in Egypt. Those were just those are the famous ones. But he goes, like, we start like seeing how they were moving stuff and how heavy these things are, and then they're going up over stories. And he goes, basically what they were getting at was just they would love to have gone back and just seen it in process, like the process.
Right.
Like, how did you do this? And I think what they were saying was like how advanced our civilization might have been at one point in time. And again, I don't know the whole dip as to why we would be that high and then dip and then come like back out. But I think when you start looking back at human history, and some of it you know answers to, and some of it you don't. But like how advanced were these civilizations thousands of years ago that we might have thought were like very simplistic people, but then you realize like what they were actually doing. You're like, holy crap! Like this like right now would be innovative. And they were doing it back then with, I would deem, way less resources.
Without calculators, evidently.
I would think, but then again, who knows? They might have had, like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't technology, maybe it was something else. But
maybe we are all just aliens from another planet that
just living in like an experiment. And they were talking about Atlantis too. They said, like, you see the way they had like the sand and stuff. At one point, that was an actual. I don't know whether that was above water or not, but that was an actual like place.
No, that's all of these topics are super, super fascinating. In Central and South America, same thing. There are civilizations and pyramids and ruins that we're just discovering using sort of like newer technology, whether it be what am I trying to say? Not like radar or
Almost like sonar or something.
yeah, just being able to go over and say, oh, that we thought that was just a rainforest or a jungle, and kind of find out there's an entire civilization that's just grown over. We didn't even know it was there, and just figuring out that what the hell were these people doing, and why were they building it this way, and it's kind of like when we were out in Chichen Itza. There's a ruin in Chichen Itza in Mexico that, when the sun goes through the top at a certain time of year, the shadow on the rocks on both sides looks sort of, when the sun goes down, it makes a snake. And that was, it was an intentional design that was sort of honoring like this some kind of snake. Be like you say, people were pretty precise about stuff when they didn't necessarily evidently have the tools to be that precise about things.
Well, that, and I think that the crazy thing now, when you look at like the civilization, and the one thing that fascinated me, and I've talked about it before on this, is that people are buying land in virtual worlds.
The metaverse.
Well, like metaverse, and I feel like I'm like, you ever seen the clip with, was it Brian Gumbel talking about the internet? Like the old clip where he's like, I don't know, just go, like all this stuff, like, but it's like, I don't know, I got an email. It's like, I don't know what this email thing is, but so I feel like it's my Brian Gumbel moment, but I don't really know what the metaverse is in the sense, if I know it's like a virtual reality AI.
Well, have you ever tried out an Oculus?
No.
Okay. First of all, you got to go out and buy the Oculus too. We bought the Oculus.
Those are the new ones from Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Facebook, here's,
or Meta, whatever company made it.
But, Oculus was a startup, 3D startup that Mark Zuckerberg, when he's starting Facebook, he says, Facebook in its present iteration isn't really the big, he wants to connect people. And right now, the first vehicle was a web page. The next vehicle was an app. But what's the next iteration of that? Well, the reason why Facebook bought Oculus 7 years ago, and there's a really interesting interview with Gary Vaynerchuk and Mark Zuckerberg about this, and it's not too long ago. But, it's about connecting people again. So you put this thing on, my 11-year-old son has it, and you're in a virtual world. Like you are in a house, and you're looking around, and you're looking outside, and you can walk around the house, and you can see people, and it's very rudimentary right now, but it's very real, and you don't have to be all that intelligent to say, extrapolating this forward just a few years, it's well within our it's going to happen. Where I put one on, you put one on, you want to do a podcast, hey David, let's sit down and have a conversation, and I don't move. And you don't leave here. Mm-hmm. You put it on, but I walk into your conference room, and you have it appointed in any way you want. In fact, right now, there are clothing designers, Ralph Lauren and the like, who are, have you ever played Fortnite?
No.
Okay, the game Fortnite.
I'm aware of it, but I've never played it.
And the game Fortnite, it's a free game. They make millions of dollars every month for a lot of reasons, but mainly buying skins. You can buy a skin every week. There's new skins that come out. Trust me, I've spent literally $1,000 on stupid skins for my two boys playing Fortnite. And they get peer pressured into, either it's all of the football teams are now available, so now you can dress, your character can wear that skin.
Oh, so skin is like a costume.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And so, but all the different costumes, all the different iterations. The Rock right now is a skin in Fortnite, and you can look like him, and you can be The Rock, right? Costs $11 for the stupid skin, and it's all virtual.
Yeah.
But the kids have peer pressure to have skins because they don't want to be the kid who, if you show up on the game with the original outfit, you're a loser, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
it's like showing up with like the Folkleys back in the day. You want the real Oakley. It's like, I don't want the cheap. Yeah.
So in the metaverse, when I put on if I want to dress in a Ralph Lauren suit and come to the meeting with you, I'm going to pay Ralph Lauren for the skin.
Unreal.
Okay.
So unreal.
And my image will look like my face, like what you're looking at, because you.
So I literally feel like I could see, like,
you're gonna have a conversation.
Now they're doing like the hand stuff, where like right.
Right now it's just two controllers we have at home, but yeah, they're working on all of that.
There's like a claw thing where I could probably shake your hand and physically feel like I'm shaking Dave's hand.
Right, because all of the haptics, like on your phone where you touch it, and when you hit your
pulse
iPhone,
and everything.
that's all being developed. And so you just think about that. You're going to be able to buy a home in the virtual world.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to buy a car, and you're going to experience. You could be able to go on vacation with your kids. I mean, the scary thing about that is like you're all just in your home, sitting down with the stupid thing on. But I mean, that kind of, if you go all the way to that end, I think it's a little creepy. But at the same time, if you are a business and you want to have a conference, a global conference with your team, you know, right now we're like, oh, Zoom is so great and I can see you on the screen and it's real time and it's not slow. But it's really going to be interesting when you can put on these things and you can walk into the conference room and you can see all of your teammates around the table and you'll sit down and you'll have a whole conversation. You know, great headset, great, you know, audio.
Well, I think what's going to happen too is like like we're both in the business field. If all of a sudden you're like Elon Musk is giving is hosting an event or a keynote and you want to go to it.
Yeah.
You just, okay, well, like you get a ticket and you put it on, you like walk into this big conference room and there's Elon and like he shakes your hand, or all of a sudden you can like walk by and be like, what's up? He's like, hey man, how's it going? But then you can like see every, like, I just look at like weird things like that. And like you said, the skins, the reason I'm saying is like people are buying land in virtual worlds, which same thing. The way your kids want a skin for whatever reason, like, and again, it's like anything else that is a commodity. It's the value you place on it. So if your son and millions of other, young men around the world are playing this game and want to have it, then there's that certain level of demand for it.
Right.
And there's a certain level of like, oh, that looks like something I would want. So when you go in real estate land, like all of a sudden, if you're dealing with something with real estate and someone's got, I call it the Malibu, waterfront in this virtual world, well, everybody would like to have that because of the view or whatever. Because again, you can see it. So it's like, well, it's not. I don't have to live in, middle. I don't have to live in a flyover state. I can live along the coast of California, and it's gorgeous. And I see, birds, and I see the surfers, and I get the saltwater feel I can taste, and I literally am living in Des Moines, and that's it's crazy to think about, or like traveling. Like, hey, I want to go to like Australia today, and I don't want to take the flight.
I couldn't believe it when I was like, I'm watching Reese play Fortnite a couple of years ago now, and suddenly he says, "Yeah, there's a Marshmello concert." The rapper, the guy with the big like white.
Oh yeah.
He's like, "There's a concert happening right now. It's a big live event. There's like everybody around the world is all excited about this." And so I'm watching him, and his character is in there, and they essentially they cancel everybody's guns, so there's no more ammunition, and they allowed people to have they changed their gravity. So like if you jumped, you could be in the air, and you could float a little bit. And so now the character, and then up on your TV screen, on the screen was a stage,
the DJ guy, whatever,
and he comes out, and they go through like 5 or 6 songs, and Reese has his headset on, and he has the controller, and he's controlling his guy, and he's watching him.
So he feels like, is that like Coachella or something?
Yeah, I mean, and this guy he's being paid millions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he's really doing the sound stuff somewhere, and you're seeing a virtual version of him. And at that moment I was just like, holy macaroni, like this is really gonna happen. Like, and kids aren't gonna care. That Marshmello event was awesome yesterday. Did you go?
I know.
And
I know. Makes you rethink the concert tickets you just bought to see someone live and to really just see the music.
Well, then you have the COVID or any type of thing like that, and now you see the slippery slope is, we get scared enough, we won't go anywhere.
Yeah. And the thing is, you always say, does it make people less social or more social? I think this is actually going to break the barrier a little bit.
It's more social, but differently.
I think it'd be more social than hiding behind a computer typing or something. Because you still got to. I would still think there's still some level of realistic functionality. Like if I was this is the thing that's crazy. It's like if I was to make a facial expression, could you see my facial expression?
Right now, no.
And that's kind of the thing.
But that's only a matter of time.
Because if I start talking, they just move my mouth generically, like it looks like I'm talking. But I could be I think there's. And again, it's very early stages. This is going to get to the point where you're take early video games to where they are now.
Well, Reese plays monkey tag, right? He puts on the thing.
Is that a monkey or a monkey tag? Is that a video game?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a video game in the Oculus.
Okay.
and he has to. We have an open room downstairs in our basement, and he stands there, and you see him talking to 4 or 5 of his friends. He's like, "All right, let's go," and they go into this room playing monkey tag, and it's literally 30 because he can cast it to a TV, and I can watch him if I want. So I can watch on the TV what they're seeing in this screen in front of him. And
so you can see his buddies running around.
Yeah, he can see his buddies running around. I can watch the whole thing. Right?
Yes. Wow.
And I'm seeing it from his point of view, actually.
Yeah.
Right. But they're all playing tag, and they're climbing trees and jumping off of trees and sort of running around in this area and he's like, he's walking in this, and he has a limited space he can walk, but he's moving his arms because in the game, the only way you move is like almost like you're a gorilla using your arms.
Or like a skier, like a cross-country skier.
But like boom, boom, both arms, and then he climbs the tree, one arm, one arm left arm, right arm, left arm, right arm, and he's like going crazy, right? And then so like they play endless rounds of this thing, and he takes it off at the end, and he's like
out of breath,
gassed. I mean, his face is sweat. His body, he's it's a full blown exercise.
So like when he's climbing, it's like almost like climbing in place, but he's like it's not like he's physically has to go find something to climb a wall.
No.
So like
he's climbing in place.
Like I was thinking, like if somebody walked in here and was like, "Hey, I want to sit at the chair with you," like they would go grab the chair and like go to sit. Like, will they just
right? But they would probably just. They'd bring the chair over, and then they wouldn't have to sit, but they could hit a button.
They'd do like a motion to make it feel like they're sitting.
Yeah.
And then they'd be standing there but feeling like they're sitting. But what they're seeing is like them sitting with me and you.
Yeah, out of their eyes. They would be like,
It's so wild.
No, you ought to really try it. If you're not careful, it can be a little bit like...
It's crazy.
It's like it can cause you to have sort of like, what do they call it? Like a motion sickness if you're not careful. Like sometimes you just...
I would love to. Like I like new stuff like technology. I'm not the ones that be like, oh, that's stupid, I won't try it, because you know it's going that way. And the thing is, when you like, I think the last 2, 3, 4, I mean maybe longer, but I think like over the last couple years, there's been like like someone threw gas on a fire with the amount of just like technology and a lot of kids on like this young kids getting on social media, because it's like anything else. It's a fad, or it's like, well, I wouldn't say it's a fad, but it's like a cultural movement, but it starts out as a fad amongst young kids, and then all of a sudden it catches fire, and all of a sudden they just kind of lead this morph, and then it's like anything else. Like parents didn't have Facebook until kids had Facebook, and then parents had it, and then kids were like, yeah, I'm going to get off Facebook because mom and dad and grandma are on it, and then I think that you kind of start seeing, that's why I like TikTok, and that's why Instagram, and I don't know how big overall like Twitter and Snapchat are in the game, but TikTok's obviously huge right now for kids, and I'm sure there's other platforms I haven't even heard of that kids are all over. But I think that looking at this just is going to cause everybody eventually to start rethinking what they want to do, at least within business. And like people said, you'll never buy a home virtually, and I agree. I think you will buy homes virtually. The problem is right now in our world, like over COVID, it's like I'll do a walkthrough with the phone. I'm like, the problem with that is people don't have the spatial awareness. But if you can put the glasses on and you can have the spatial awareness, you can walk in a room and feel, okay, the window's about this tall, the door swings open here, it feels like I can put my bed here, but you're physically in the space. That absolutely, I think people will buy without having to physically be in a spot. But like, when you're seeing, even 3D images make it look cool, but you don't get to feel the spatial awareness. Put the glasses on, then I think the sky's the limit. And I don't know, kind of in your business and my business, like I'm not naive to think like real estate agents or staffing companies will never have a job. But at that point, you'd have to tap into some type of emotional intelligence in order to make that happen, like was it EQ kind of thing,
sure,
or EI or whatever. Yeah. You'd have to really tap into that aspect, because again, we don't sell products, we sell services, which is, at the end of the day, is a human element, because there's emotion, there's a lot of just that connectivity. But I'm not naive to think that my job might be obsolete at some point in time, and then you just evolve and do something different. But someone could come in and all of a sudden disrupt the service industry, where it's like I really don't need someone because I have some virtual robot that can talk to me just as a normal person would talk to me.
Well, I think here's what I say. I think again, the job that what you provide is the advice and direction in helping two deals come together. What is going to help, there's technology already, software companies out there that are developing devices that can quickly take sort of 3D images of the house, and then sort of provide that imaging up to a 3D, Oculus style viewer. What's going to be great is if somebody wants to buy a house, that doesn't take you out of your game. All that does is it saves you gas.
Yeah, to be honest, it's quicker.
And in fact, you would be smart to.
That would be a competitive advantage for me.
Yeah, you could put this. You could put one on. You could have your customer put one on. Matter of fact, you have 2 or 3 of them here at your office and say, "Come to meet me in the office. Let's go. Let's walk through 25 homes right now." And then at the end, which one do you really like? I really like this one. All right, let's go see it. Right, and then because that's probably the next iteration for as long as you and I are going to be.
I think that happens in the next 5 years.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, and
I think that's really neat, though.
Oh, I do too. Like I said, I think I'm never going to shy away from tech. Like I think it's just you have to adapt to it and learn it. But I think you have to embrace it and try to find the competitive advantage of what's coming out. And that's something that I've always tried to be ahead of the curve on a lot of stuff because I try to see what's coming, and then I try to just let's say go all in, but I try to go into it and learn it. That's why there's a few things right now. With life being a little crazy, business and just having 3 young kids, like there's some stuff I don't get to focus as much on.
Right.
So I find that there's there's some things right now, technology-wise, in the world that I'm a little, I think, behind the 8 ball on.
If I were you, I'd do yourself a favor, and for Christmas, I'd buy yourself. It's $399 for an Oculus 2.
It's worth it.
Just buy it. I think that. The reason I'm often, and my wife and I are often, probably more me than she is, but she's always down for whatever I'm sort of, she knows I'm a tech geek. But it's like, I don't ever want to be left behind. Like, I buy it for my kids, but as much for, like, I like knowing. I like standing there watching them go to the Marshmallow concert. Because in my mind, I'm like, wow, like these people, like, there wasn't 50,000 people at this concert. There was 50 million people at this concert, all around the world, simultaneously. That's pretty wild. I mean, like, just that access, because that concert, even though in the game there's only 100 players watching at a time, that him doing the Marshmallow side, providing sort of the talent, that could be going on simultaneously at an infinite number of stages.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, think of like Live Aid or Woodstock or these things where you have.
But I mean,
like
simultaneously, because in the game of Fortnite, there's only 100 players at a time on the stage on the island, but that island can be duplicated infinitely.
Well, I was thinking like almost like a global Woodstock where you have like 1,000 stages and there's bands all over the place, and you're just like, oh my god, I can watch so and so and I can watch so and so, and these bands are honestly just playing in their studio at their house,
right?
But millions of people watch them.
Yeah.
And are you? How much do you know about NFTs?
Not enough, even though I am aware of, it's no different than, non-fungible tokens, and is a digital representation of it's a digital object. It is you can have a piece of art that is done entirely digitally, and then somebody'd say, yeah, but it's really easy to copy that and just have unlimited number of copies. Yes, but there's only one original, and then one original NFT is where the value is, not unlike a piece of art. Do you have the original, or do you have a print?
Yeah, how many prints of Mona Lisa are there?
And you have a print, or do you have the poster? Even that. So, like, that same thing is going to happen. So I think that's interesting, that there's a market for that. What's more interesting to me than NFTs themselves is the whole, like, the digital contract, the smart contract, and the world of, and you should do more research in this, because I think that your ability to have a digital contract, like the whole real estate contract, and how that, how much more, the whole blockchain and digital contracts, from what I understand it, is sort of it more strongly reinforces terms, more strongly reinforces who is involved in that transaction, and it's imminently enforceable. it can't be burned up in a fire. It can't be. I think that there's work to be done along the whole the NFT side. Like Bitcoin is less interesting than the blockchain. NFTs are less interesting than the smart contracts. That's from what I'm understanding. That's the world.
This is some stuff that I want to look into, but it fascinates me. But it's also one where if I'm not in it and I'm not really looking into it and really learning it, I always feel like I'm falling behind. Yeah. So I get like a little bit of anxiety of like I don't have to be investing in them, but I want to understand them. I want to understand where they're going because I think. The good thing about you and I is, we call the shots and we can, I allude to like a bobsled or like a hockey player. We're hockey players. So we can stop on a dime and change direction.
Right.
Really by just saying we want to change direction. I mean, there's stuff with it, but we don't have to ask permission to do it.
Yeah. I think the slippery slope though, for people like you and me is like at some point, we have to recognize, if you care about sort of growing your company, growing your earnings and everything, like it's really easy for me to sort of go down all these different rabbit holes. I love learning about them, but executing our business every day and then at the end of the day, managing the time with the kids and sort of making certain that they grow up. If I go down too many different wormholes, I feel like I have there's a decreasing marginal benefit over time. I probably should just focus on my business.
Yeah. I was going to say I think most pillars, when I really try to like break it down and say like what's most important, I really only have like, you have like your family and your work. And then I have, I would say family, work, and I try to put in like, obviously exercise and things like that.
Yeah.
But then you take that off. Then for me, typically, it's like, can I have some like fun, play, recreation? Because I think like just mentally I need, time, and that's either golf or skiing for me. So I put those two on the table. And then there's always like the learning aspect that I try to fit in, where can I learn about stuff? And that might be learning a hobby or a skill, or that could be learning like just doing research. But when I always break stuff down, that's really where they fall. Like like you said, video games. Like I don't say you play them, but like you mentioned video games. Like I want to put video games in my day to day because like it's not something that dives to the top. But it's when you start putting these pillars down, I really always come back to the same like 5 or 6 pillars. And really, you could probably bunch a couple of them together. So it's really like maybe 4 or 5 tops.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of where you just live. You live in that like lane. Because again, you can only, if you want to do something at a high level, you have to really put your chips all in like major baskets. You can't just diversify everything in your life, because then you just kind of, you know a lot about a very little amount, and that doesn't really get you far in life in a lot of things. But Dave, wrap it up there.
I think we got to wrap it up.
That's good. This was great. I actually learned a lot. That's not as a bad. That actually sounded like a bad shot at Dave. No. I always learn stuff with Dave, but this I learned, like, it was good.
I think it's always fun to sit down and have a conversation with somebody. I feel like today it was, for me, it was a real conversation. I got lost. You forget that you're doing a podcast, but if you can just sort of be in the moment and really just, no matter what the topic is, I think that's what's compelling about podcasts, is that when I listen to them, and I listen to so many different types, it's funny. Like I listen to some that are really, really educational, and then I listen to some that are sort of just people shooting the breeze, Mm-hmm. And when you can be sort of that fly on the wall audience member, just 2 people shooting the breeze who might be funny and might be compelling, it's really super interesting. So hopefully somebody gets something out of this conversation today as well. Yeah. No, I thought it was great. So, Dave, anybody needs to find you, where can they find you and the rest of the team? We are at CoryerStaffing.com and 518-324-5678. You can email me, David, at CoryerStaffing.com. We are also located at 20 Susie Wilson Road in Essex, Vermont. So Coryer Staffing, Vermont, Coryer Staffing, North Country, and we hope to meet you soon. And beyond. All right, that's episode 177 of The Galen Trombley Show. Thanks for listening to The Galen Trombley Show. If you want to reach me, you can go on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. The spelling, GaelanTrombley.